Welcome, listeners. Welcome to Kyle and Cody's Cult Cinema Cast, home of bombs, blunders, and bullion. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Cody.
Like the new intro?
You're just dedicated to that double welcome, aren't you? At this,
Yes. You pointed it out. This is your fault, Cody.
and I mean, at first I was like, oh, maybe if I point it out, he won't double down on it, and now he's like triple down on it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe if I do it again, he won't like quadruple down on it, but I'm assuming he's gonna eventually quadruple down on it.
Yeah. You made a mistake here. So, oldest movie we've reviewed so far. I think it's actually probably going to be the oldest. No, actually, I do something older planned for next season. So, scratch that. So yeah, 1931 version of Dracula, based on the 1924 stage play.
So in hindsight, this actually might be one of the most expensive movies we've actually looked at. Just comparing the budget in 1931 spending power compared to modern day spending power.
Yeah, 66. Yeah, the 1931 budget is 66,000 on this.
I only got three. No, I've got 355,000.
Oh, that's the English version. It's oh yeah, so yeah, okay, yeah, never mind. Never mind. You are right though, because yeah, we're actually reviewing a slightly different version of the 31 Dracula. Back in the day, in early Hollywood, it was kind of common for people to film a Spanish cut or a French cut or a German cut or whatever of the movie they were making with the same sets and the same costumes. This one in particular, its filming is done at the nights after the English film was filmed. So that thing probably had the $350,000, and then this had $60,000 additionally, probably mostly to pay for the actors and some new costumes. So yeah, this you're actually probably not too far off there. 30 plus million?
Yep,
Wait, no, 30, yeah, 30 plus million. Actually, that's not.
not quite, but
But yeah, we decided to review a Spanish version, which is appreciated by many as this, including me, because I did watch the English version with this is the English version of the Bela Legosi Dracula movie, and I did watch that just before we started recording so I could compare it. This is leagues better. Like,
I didn't take a look at it. I have downloaded it.
yeah, but no, it is like I was surprised. It's just so much better. Like, where to start with that? Now I have a love for long movies, and the Spanish version is actually 30 minutes longer, but that actually has nothing to do with this. This actually goes by way faster in terms of feel than the 31 movie. This holds up just infinitely better. It's weird. The acting's better. The camera work's better. The pacing's better. The script's better. Part of that is because the Spanish crew, well, I say Spanish crew. A lot of the guys on were Americans and whatnot, but the crew on the Spanish film was able to look at the English film's dailies at the end when they got into work at the evening, and essentially you're copying off someone else's homework. Where it's just like, okay, they got this shot a little bit wrong. We can shoot it differently, and that'll make our movie better. And it turned out a way bit better. And I think the English version is subject to some 1930s censorship too. So the Spanish version is able to put in a lot more, but and that's where I thought the Spanish version would turn out to be better. But actually, it's not even all that much more. I wouldn't even say significantly more violent. It's maybe like 1% or something. Like, and maybe that means a lot to the 1930s censors. I don't know, but just so much better. It just makes so much difference, and they don't. The English film will do things like it'll spend a lot of time explaining things to you and like, okay, here's what's happening. And you'd think that would be in order to make the movie shorter, but I don't even know that you couldn't have done that in a better way to make it better. Like maybe like someone in the comments or whatever is gonna point this out to me that like, oh yeah, they couldn't have possibly done this any better than what you're doing. But it just I don't quite believe it. The Spanish one just turns out way better. The performances are a lot more subdued, if that makes sense, and a little bit more honestly more modern. A lot of the English actors are very melodramatic, as you can expect from some of these ni- early 20th century movies, which they have that flair about them that makes them all cheesy and whatnot. The Spanish cut doesn't really have that as much, and the acting is just. And I'm not even able to speak Spanish or whatever, but I could tell the acting was just like a way better, and I think also the camera work does the actors a lot more favors in the Spanish version. A lot of scenes where the Dracula in this Carlos Villarius, he is allowed to do a lot more acting than Bela Lugosi is. Like when they want to make Bela Lugosi look menacing, they just kind of like zoom in on his face, whereas when Victor is doing his performance or Carlos is doing his performance, he's able to like look creepy and like leer at people over their shoulders, and it's just not that him staring at people with a light on his face. And maybe it's censorship because I mean 1930s, it's a thing that could happen, but yeah, I just can't stress how much better the Spanish version is. So like it's at least 2 points better,
Here's
especially
what
for the modern eyes.
I
Yeah.
thought, because I didn't go in and I didn't watch the actual Bela Lugosi movie because I did download it, but you said we were doing the Spanish version, so I went for the Spanish version, watched it. I liked from all of the still cuts and like images that I've seen of Bela Lugosi's Dracula, he looks more mean. He looks more menacing. He looks more dark compared to Carlos's Dracula, which seemed, in my opinion, a lot of the times he was creepy. I'll give him that much, but it was more so. It was just more
Yeah.
comically done. He's always grinning. It's not a leer almost. It's a grin, and that's kind of the issue I have with it is it's just not as dark and it's not as menacing as I was saying. I don't like using words and repetition as much.
Bela Lugosi has like a different look, and like he's got in the cut that we watched, there's actually a little bit from the lead actress in the Spanish cut, Lupita Tovar, who lived to be 106, by the way.
That's
She got
pretty
to be,
cool.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's so yeah, she had a long life. I think she was probably 90 when they filmed that interview or so, or maybe yeah, 90ish when they filmed that interview probably, or late 90s even. But anyway,
She's still alive.
like Bela Lugosi has no, she passed away now.
I'm assuming not. No.
No, she's no. No,
Okay.
she was 106 at her passing. But yeah, Bela Lugosi has like longer, as she pointed out, longer fingers, and he looks more he has more of the look, if that makes sense. He has that kind of vaguely undead like appearance that Carlos doesn't so much have. Carlos was instructed to imitate Lugosi's performance a little bit, but he doesn't have that just like natural spookiness that Bela Lugosi has, which is just a consequence of him having a certain facial structure and body type.
Hmm.
Um, but I think the Dracula, Carlos's Dracula, has something a bit more going for him, and perhaps this is something that Bela Lugosi's Dracula wasn't allowed to do. but he is allowed to be almost this Jack the Ripper like caricature where he's very leering and creepy, and he's not like a slasher movie monster where he's incredibly like epically scary, but he is, you get the impression that he does kill people, which is the most important thing. It's not the glamorous slasher movie version of killing people. It's the, yeah, dead in a ditch. I'll get more into this later. Yeah, I think we'll start the plot now, but because we've talked a bunch about this already. Because I have one more actor I want to talk about a bit more, but he appears halfway through the movie, and I can talk about him there.
Okay.
So this opens, yeah. Um, in contrast, this, I think this film has scenes that are actually shot at night, where a lot of the English versions have day for night shots, which aren't looking good. And even if I'm not entirely accurate, there was the Spanish crew was able to adjust their lighting to compensate for where the lighting in the English version had been bad, because so the Spanish version also looks a lot better. So yeah, the movie opens with one of our characters, Renfield, and a couple others in the back of a bumpy coach ride. One of the women, Sarah, is giving exposition on the region and is getting bumped around the place. He is asked. The villagers and the carriage driver are very much nervous about being out and about on their own. They make it into now. They Renfield asks the driver to slow down to make the road less bumpy, but he just says, "No, we got to make it to town before nightfall, dude." In the Spanish cut, they actually refer to him as Nosferatu a fair bit, which is kind of odd. They arrive in the town. One of the subtitles actually said, they cut to some of the villagers. One of the subtitles says praying in a foreign language, and I'm like, wait, this is all in a foreign
Yeah.
language to me. I'm listening to subtitles.
I'm pretty sure I was reading on the Wikipedia page somewhere that actually they were praying in Hungarian. They were in
Yeah,
Hungary,
entirely possible.
or roughly somewhere around there, and they were actually praying in Hungarian, not just Spanish. I guess would be the
Yeah,
what we were listening
yeah,
to. So
Hungarian would be a language that would be native to the region.
hmm.
Bela Legosi is actually born Hungarian, so that was a thing.
Is Hungary? Where's Transylvania? Is that in
Um,
Hungary? Romania,
it's
Central Romania.
Yeah, it's in Romania or Bulgaria, one of them, depending on where you're talking. Or parts of it are
Uh-huh.
in Romania, parts are in Bulgaria. Hungarian is a language they sometimes speak in the area. They might have just gone with that to, I guess, theoretically match. I say Bela Lugosi's accent, but it doesn't make too much sense here.
Hmm.
Because I mean that'd be a choice you'd make in the English version to make sure the accents line up with where the people are supposed to be regionally. So yeah, they stop in this town. The carriage driver starts unloading the baggage for him, but Renfield points out that no, my luggage stays on top. I need to meet up with a another coach that's going to take me to Castle Dracula. And the town
Hmm.
just kind of freaks out about this and tells him that, oh, we really prefer you to just go in the morning. I'm like, no, I gotta meet him at midnight, man. That's what I'm supposed to do. It's business. And
Hmm.
if you've read the book, you've noticed a little bit of different here, little bit of difference here. In the book, John Harker had actually visited Castle Dracula, and this is actually this character Renfield, who is in the book but doesn't have this job. And I think it works okay here
Hmm.
because does give you, it does debatably give you more time with Dracula, and it kind of does explain why Renfield helps out Dracula, which I don't know is I think in the book he's just kind of found. But yeah, so it's a little bit of a different change. I think this might have been a thing from because this is adapted from the play, not the book so much. So, yeah, the carriage driver begrudgingly continues on. One of the ladies from the town passes a cross onto Renfield to protect him because they're all very concerned for his safety and their safety because I guess Dracula's around here and people go missing at night. And that's not entirely wrong. They continue to this Borgo Pass to meet Dracula. He gets kicked out of the carriage and his baggage gets thrown off. And then as soon as they reach this other carriage, and the carriage driver just fucks off immediately. Understandable. Renfield gets into the other carriage. We see a character who I'm pretty sure is supposed to just be Dracula in a face covering.
Yeah,
This is a change from this is a change from the Bela Legosi version where this was just a separate actor,
yeah.
which I think this makes more sense here because I don't imagine he has a ton of servants, and it also explains when Renfield gets dropped off, the driver kind of disappears, and the fact that it's just Dracula just kind of explains it a lot better.
So one of the things I'd like to point out here, there was the bat flying in front of Dracula, which every time we've seen Dracula in the series as a bat, he's always a character. So they showed the bat flying in front of the horses. So is Dracula escorting them to the castle with the coach driver? Is it a budget issue where they didn't want to hire on another servant? But then again, why make your lead come in and do like the grunt? Oh, play this kind of extra in the movie. We could have put anybody in the spot, but let's put the main actor on screen for it for people to
I was just
recognize.
figuring it was I figured it was a kind of a similar situation to the King Haggard thing from Last Unicorn, where it's just like he doesn't have people to help him out, and he's just guarding his own
But then
gates.
why show the bat?
Yeah, I guess it's just to demonstrate stuff's weird, demonstrate where he disappears to. It's also 1931. I don't know how universal knowledge of vampires is going to be to the general audience at this point. I mean,
Probably pretty
the books of
decently. Yeah.
maybe, yeah. I mean, the book is like 50 years old still at this point, in
Uh-huh.
1931. But I don't know. It's maybe who knows how. Yeah, it's harder to spread this. I don't know. Who could say? But maybe it's just to introduce the powers a little bit better. But yeah, I don't really have a great explanation for that. Yeah, they arrive at Castle Dracula. Renfield finds that his pack and his bags are missing. Also, the
Hmm.
carriage driver is missing, so he just wanders up to the castle, and the doors are kind of opening on their own, which is probably really freaky in 1931. I mean, think of it this way: they don't have like electronic doors are not a common sight in 1931, much less on decrepit old castles in
Hmm.
like electricityless lands in the middle of Eastern Europe. Like this is probably a very freaky thing we're not addressing because a bunch of doors just kind of open on their own, and there is no logical explanation for that. We get a little bit of a glimpse of, or we had a little bit of a glimpse of the catacombs underneath the Castle Dracula. Carlos, you see him reach out from the coffin and lift up the lid gets lifted up, and you just kind of see him like what's clearly just him from a crouching position, just slowly standing up to appear from the coffin.
Hmm.
They don't have the impressive effect they have in Nosferatu, where it's kind of like tip the coffin up. So yeah, we meet him and we see his Dracula's brides, who are interesting in this. Um, One difference in this is that the women wear more. What's the word I'm looking for? I hesitate to say skimpy because they're still not like terribly skimpy
Hmm.
outfits, but sexier outfits, more chest. Whereas in the English one, everyone's a lot more covered up.
Hmm.
Both the brides and the English women we meet later. But it's one of the main differences. The costumes on them are quite a bit different. The costumes on the men stay kind of the same. They are different, but it's less noticeable because, I mean, obviously a lot of them have different body types. Um, Bela Legosi and Carlos have look vaguely similar body types, but the actors who like play Van Helsing and Doctor Sewer are like completely different body types between the movies. They are both somewhat hefty men in the Spanish version, whereas in the English version they're kind of like skinnier ones or like more average size. So that's a bit of a costume change. A lot of very like the sets are actually very nice in this one. You get a lot of time to appreciate them. Dracula greets Renfield from from a big grand staircase while holding a candle, introduces himself, and guides him up into the core of the castle. Renfield has to swat his way through some webs with his cane because this is the 1930s. Everyone has a cane.
Okay,
Yeah.
so as you just said, Renfield had to swat his way through with a cane. Dracula was right in front of him and walked through those webs completely unscathed. Didn't cut a path for Renfield or anything. Just, I don't know,
I like to think
missed.
I like to think he just kind of I like to think he kind of just like phased through them, and that's maybe what happened.
That's the only explanation I've got, and it doesn't tell you anything about it either. It's just like he walks through, he gives a speech about spiders, and Renfield's looking confused, and then he mows
Yeah.
his way through. I don't know.
Yeah, we hear yeah, he makes a comment about wolves and it being howling and it being like a beautiful sign of the night. By the way, tons of wolf howling in this movie. No wolf animals in either version, which is weird. And it's like maybe this is why we don't cuz vampires can in the original lore transform into wolves fairly famously, but you never see that in any of the movies. I think it's cuz bat props are easy to come by. They look very
Hmm.
cheap,
Or
but
cheaper to make.
I'm yeah, I mean you can easily attach them to like a puppet setup and make it look kind of
Hmm.
okay.
Well, they don't have stills back
The
then, right? Because what they'd do is they'd just go in via string and pull it on top over the camera, correct?
no, I mean
Like it's
they
that
shoot
old is what I'm
yeah.
saying. It's not a special effect. It's just
Yeah, these are
somebody's
actual
moving
rubber
it.
bats. That they're just kind of like tugging around. And kudos to this. They saw how bad the bats looked in the English version and then spent a lot less time on them in this version so they look a lot better. Like if you go from the English version to this, the bats are just going to be a lot less distracting in this one. And that's one of the strengths
Okay.
of this movie is like every little thing that would have bothered you about the Spanish version for the most part or the English version for the most part is at least addressed in the Spanish version. And like
Hmm.
the lack of effects are compensated for a lot better. The English director fails to get something shot right. Spanish director's like, you know what, we could do it like this, and it'll look a lot better. And hence, I mean, a lot from us. The cinematography is just leagues better as a result.
And I mean, as you said earlier, there was a higher runtime in this.
Yeah, you get the
So
extra
I mean,
half
if
hour.
they were to take that and put it into the budget rather than take that and put it into, I mean, I guess not really good special effects even at that. Once
I
again,
imagine they were
if they
probably
took
okay at the time.
if they took what the Americans were doing, because I mean, it was the same set, right? They had copies of everything,
Yeah,
cut in the bats and stuff like that.
yeah,
Cut it in instead of having to go straight from scratch shot. It
yeah.
probably helped
I was
towards.
yeah. I know a very weird location that Renfield's noticing because it's like, okay, this is very disheveled for apparent nobility because he's coming here to help out a count find a place in England. So he was probably expecting something a lot more regal. Yeah, Dracula actually personally takes Renfield's hat and coat and puts them away. He serves him his Renfield his meal, which he has prepared for him. We find out that they have been going through secret correspondence. Um, Dracula had ordered Renfield to burn their letters, so no one knows where he is.
And I like how he never asked any questions about that.
Yeah, this is how you get kidnapped, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, like yeah. I'm
Is
going to
this
make a
how
point about
normal people do it in 19, or I guess not 1931, it would have been like early
no.
1800s. But between lawyers, right?
Yeah,
Solicitor,
no, yeah, this is official legal shit.
okay, that's definitely not supposed to happen.
Yeah, you should be smarter than this. I'm going to make a point about Dracula being kind of rapey later in this review, and this doesn't help. Like when the way you see him treat some of the female characters, you kind of don't feel good for Renfield's position here because
No.
yeah, this is how people get kidnapped. Let's
Hmm.
just be honest. So Renfield has prepared a purchase of a property in London for Count Dracula. It just requires Count Dracula's signature. Yeah, Renfield had brought him a bunch of baggage tags, but Dracula points out that he's only going to be bringing 4 boxes full of dirt, or four boxes. Yeah, while Renfield's eating, he cuts himself on a knife, which is a market approved. Actually, I don't know. In the English version, he cuts himself on a staple. What's more klutzy?
The knife.
Yeah, is it more klutzy to cut yourself with a knife that you were being uncareful with, or to cut yourself with something you didn't think you were going to be able to cut yourself with?
Uh, I mean, I don't think I've ever been in a position where I'm like, I'm gonna cut myself with a staple. Like, there's been parts of my life where I'm gonna staple myself, but that's a completely different thing. Like, you don't pick up a staple and go, "Oops, I accidentally cut myself with this." I just, I don't know.
This is
I
probably a
don't.
1930s staple too, so it's maybe a bit more spooky. It's maybe a bit like it's probably like double the size of a modern staple,
Yeah,
so it's probably a
maybe
lot
that's fair.
scary. Um, Possibly, I don't know. Anyway, he cuts himself, and Dracula has to resist attacking him at that moment. He kind of does like what's nowadays is a bit of a cheesy scene where he just like holds his hands like claws and like kind of like leans over him like an animal. He's like,
Hmm.
ah, but he just holds himself back and doesn't eat him right there. So he makes a point of offering Renfield some wine, and he says, "Oh, would you? Okay, I'll have some. Would you like some?" And he's like, "I don't drink wine,"
Yeah.
which is the clunkiest bit of that is a clunky bit of foreshadowing right there. Like it's barely noticeable in the English version when he does the same thing.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's a bit more noticeable with the subtitles because it's just like it literally just says, "I don't drink dot 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 wine." So he is also he points out that he has arranged travel to England tomorrow night. Apparently, he's drugged him so that he can get away from the cross, which Renfield was wearing. This is actually foreshadowed a bit better than in the English version. They just kind of like, yeah, because the English version it just skips over a bunch of stuff, but this one it's really well set up for. And it's not stated that he's wine is drugged, but
Hmm.
as he's walking away, he gets up from the table and he appears to be having a panic attack, which I thought maybe that's what this was for a little bit because he's in a very spooky environment. Like I said, the doors have been opening on their own. It's the middle of the night, a lot of wild animals around. He's probably very stressed. But yeah, it turns out he's just been drugged, and he falls down, and the Dracula's wives find him passed out,
Okay,
and they
sorry, this is where I wanted to speak on quickly here because in the movie they're shown three wives. Okay, according to you, you said that there was four boxes going across to wherever they were
yeah,
going.
they don't come with them. I think I don't. Is that where you're going with that? They don't come with them. It's weird.
Do they not at all? Like, I guess
I
you
don't
never
think they
see
do
him, but
because
no, like, what does he do with them?
yeah, I mean, in the book they stay behind too,
Uh-huh.
which is odd. And I guess, I mean, I never get the impression that he's particularly romantic with
Mm-hmm.
them. So I guess they're staying behind to watch the house.
Yeah.
Maybe they come later. Who knows?
But why does he need three boxes at that point?
Well, in the book, I think he had spread the boxes throughout London and
Mm-hmm.
used them as alternative places.
Okay, that
Um,
makes more sense. It at least we're getting some answers from an outside source rather than just
yeah, it doesn't really play into the movie, so it's maybe a bit confusing here. But yeah, in the book, he has multiple ones. Yeah,
and I mean I guess like 1931 the book would have came out in 1896 so that's about 25-year gap at least. My math's probably off.
yeah.
Um, I'm assuming that there's a large portion of people who've already read the book went, "Oh, that's coming out as a movie. Movies were kind of new. Let's go watch it as a movie." And people had a better understanding of where the books were coming from or the movie was coming from based off the books. I've never read the book personally, or at least remember that I read the book. I might have picked it up when I was really young and went, I'm going to read this, got like 50 pages in, and then dropped it. What I'm saying is a lot of things that might not make sense to the average person who's just rewatching the movie might have been covered before in the books, and as you've pointed out. But I mean, you're trying to get across a whole movie in an hour and 46 minutes compared to.
Also, who knows? Maybe just backups. It's probably good to have because these are necessary to his survival. We find later we find out later because he needs to sleep on his home soil, which
Which
he keeps in the boxes.
Yeah, which is something that I've never gotten actually from, any of the old vampire lore, in my opinion, because I've never read,
Yeah.
Dracula. So when they're like, oh, uh, vampires sleep in coffins, that type of ordeal, I've never related that to, oh, vampires need to sleep on the dirt from the country they originate from, or they die.
It's an easy thing to gloss over when you're explaining vampire stuff.
Hmm.
Like you could easily just be like, "Oh yeah, this is just a normal coffin," and ignore that there's supposed to be dirt in the bottom. But it's just an easy thing you can just like, well, don't need to worry about it. It's kind of like a weird, dumb magic thing anyway that no one really that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, they after Renfield has been subdued, he is. I guess the implication is that he has been in some way mentally dominated by Dracula,
Hmm.
which is he has a bit of hypnotic powers in him. At every scene we see him in after this, he is just like a madman.
Well, he's
So
he's a
I think
vampire,
there's about a
correct?
bunch of um.
Did Dracula not
See,
turn
here's the
him?
thing. I think he's kind of Here's the thing. My understanding is he's kind of like in a half between state
Hmm.
because he doesn't like become totally weak in sunlight at this point. Same with some of the other people that get turned. but I think there's a bit of a in between state before you become a full vampire.
Okay.
Um, so that's what I think is happening there. That's my implication. It's not really dove into, which I don't mind.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, the bits where the English version dives into stuff are really boring, so it's
Mhm.
very helpful just to like kind of figure it out. And this movie kind of does encourage you to figure it out on your own, because that's kind of what Van Helsing's character does later in the movie. Well, we'll get to that. So yeah, we cut to a ship that is in the rain.
Mhm.
Dracula's coffin opens. Um, he is very menacing and kills everyone on the boat. This scene is way better than the English version
Mhm.
because it is you barely see him moving around. There's barely any implication. Also, the boat scenes in the English version are clearly some sort of stock footage
Yes.
because like everyone else is getting splashed with water. Bela Legosi is just standing outside a door, staring.
Mhm.
The Spanish version has Dracula being a lot more active, which is very important, especially when you're trying to convince us that this thing's dangerous and that you can't just shoot him. So yeah, they arrive at England with the iconic scene of just like everyone's dead on the boat, and the captain is has his hands tied to the wheel and is dead there. Renfield is the only survivor. He is at some point interned at the sewer sanitarium. Dracula has disappeared into the night. Though next we see him, he is going to an opera house or an orchestra house where he is luring away contacting Seward, who is Dr. Seward? Yeah, Dr. Seward, who is his neighbor, essentially. The property he bought, Carfax Alley, is right next to the sanitarium. So yeah, he kind of just meets his neighbor there, and they have a sinister little foreshadowing conversation. Here is where we meet the rest of most of the rest of the cast. We meet obviously Dr. Sayward, like I said, the main characters of we know them in the English versions as John Harker, Mina Parker, or Mina Seward, and Lucy. But in this one, it's Lucia, Juan Harker, and Ava Seward. Yeah, they've Espanolized the names here, which I'm going to say is the word for that. But yeah, they finish their conversation. Yeah, Lucia figures he's quite cute as she's
Mhm.
talking to Ava a little bit after the show in her room. Lucia goes to bed that night, and we see the prop bat fly in her window, and it flies off screen. And then we see now I was when I first saw this, I was expecting some sort of like
Yeah.
smoke effect, and then Dracula would appear. I'm glad it didn't happen. He's just kind of like, okay, you see the bat, then they cut away to her, and then cut back to the other side of the room, and he's just kind of there suddenly. It's not terribly scary to the modern audience, but I get why 1931 this would have spooked some people. He does kind of have that way about him where he's just able to be disturbing and get there at the right times, and he's just kind of there and you don't quite know where he came from, and you don't have this great sense of where he is at any one time. He can be anywhere he needs to be. And yeah, then he feeds on Lucia, and we then cut to Dr. Seward and a couple of the
Mhm.
surgeons in a hospital declaring Lucia dead. They point out that she had been losing blood. They point out that they were trying to do transfusions and it didn't work. They also point out that she has tiny bite marks on her neck, which aren't very different from like what the modern effects will come to look like. The modern effects are obviously the bites are really far apart, but here there's like right close together. And we actually see them, unlike in the English version. This is actually a bit of a weaker makeup effect, though. So we then cut to another scene
Hmm.
where we're introduced to Van Helsing, who is a fair bit different from the English version. He's a bit more of a heavy set guy, and I really like him. He's just kind of catches.
Hmm.
It's not exactly like he is in the book, but it is kind of got that essence where he is kind of the hero of the story in this, less than Juan Harker, who is traditionally the hero of the vampires of the Dracula stories. But yeah, this one's very much has Van Helsing at the forefront and making all the plot decisions, which I actually like. It does make the plot feel a lot more action packed, which is definitely needed for these low effects early 20th century films. Putting it in the hands of somebody who is more competent. Yeah.
See, here's the thing that I'm gonna say this out front and forthright. It's old. I think that's the biggest thing you gotta look at it. No beating it around the bush. I don't know if it was a combination of the fact that it was black and white and the fact that it was in subtitles that I just really couldn't divulge really deeply into the plot. Like, mostly because A, there's kind of a plot, kind of not. A weird
It's also very stage play.
yeah,
Um,
interwovenness
it's a lot of people talking.
in a room.
Yeah. Um, it's a lot of people talking in rooms like a stage play, which is not always great for attention. I imagine this is a lot easier to. I mean, neither of us speak Spanish, so it's a little bit harder for us. But yeah, I think it does. I try not to hold it against that because that's not the programmed version of how this film's supposed to be watched. It's not like an American film that's made with subtitles. It's a Spanish film that we've happened to throw subtitles on. Yeah, there's not really much getting around the fact that this movie is pretty well dated. Like, there's a lot of stuff it just can't do. It's not practical.
Hmm.
But I think it's doing its best. It's giving its best effort, which I appreciate because every little thing helps it when it's at this kind of disadvantage in comparison to modern
Hmm.
movies. Yeah, to this point we see that Renfield is at the sewers sanitarium. Van Helsing has come to examine him because he figures there's a vampire at foot here. He read a scientific report or something about the deaths that are happening in London and figured he could help. In the English version, it's implied that he's already in London, but that wasn't clear to me in the Spanish cut whether that was the case or not. Renfield is in a very crazy state. He's eating flies. He's been trying to get his hands on spiders because they're a lot easier to eat. And I think this is in part of his transitional state into vampirism. He's not there yet, obviously, but I think this is yeah, he's just said Dracula tempts him forward later in the movie with promises of being able to eat rats.
That's a very weird implication there. Talking about the whole lore of vampires as a whole in itself, because like there's like a food chain of like a ladder he has to work himself up from. Is that what I'm getting to achieve immortality?
Yeah, something like that.
Like if you
Yeah,
eat 50 rats, how long is that going to sustain
yeah.
you for?
I'm guessing maybe Dracula has a good bit of control over the development of these vampires as he's making them, which is the best I can guess. Um, One thing I do appreciate is the it doesn't hold back on like kind of the kooky old style lore for
Yeah.
vampires. Nowadays, anytime you put a vampire in them, they have to have some like freakish effect to them, or like they got to be in like a very ugly Nosferatu makeup, which is always horrible to look at. And they got to give them all kinds of special powers while getting rid of the kooky stuff. But this time it's like, okay, this is just regular kooky vampire stuff, which is appreciated, honestly, nowadays, because we've had it diluted to such a formula, which where it kind of becomes boring now, where yeah,
Mm-hmm.
vampires are easily boring now. So, we hear some howling outside, and Renfield cowers at it. At some point during this conversation, Van Helsing takes out some wolfsbane, and uses it to what's the word I'm looking for? He's essentially using the wolfsbane as a spray bottle to make Renfield behave. He points out that this is something that the Central Europeans do to protect them from vampires. As Renfield is hauled out of the room, he foreshadows that Ava is going to be hurt. The next scene we see, Ava is kind of like clutching at her neck, hiding something clearly. And it's very well shot. And this is entirely absent from the English version, and in favor of like 30s melodrama, which sucks. Like this is just so much better. There's subtlety in it, for fuck's sakes. It's great. Yeah, this is where I'm getting at the point where my point earlier about this version of Dracula being very rapey. Dracula shows up as Van Helsing and Sewer are kind of figuring out what the deal is with her, and Dracula makes up tells her, "Oh, you've been having nightmares. Oh yeah, sorry. I was telling her some sad story, spooky stories about my homeland. So yeah, it's all you should just ignore it. It's all just my fault." Which is just like you really get the impression that he's being really creepy about this. He's like trying to dismiss anything she might end up saying as kind of unreliable, making her seem like an unreliable witness to anything she might say about him. And she hasn't even said his name yet. It's just a vague, it's just a blatant attempt to try to make her uncredible so that he can keep doing this. And eventually they might just start dismiss anything he might be doing in the middle of the night, which would be very creepy.
Mm-hmm.
My point is, there's a bunch of sexual assault undertones here. Yeah, he's also sneaking into women's rooms in the middle of the night. Do the math. It's not what's happening here. It's they're certainly being violated in a certain sense of the word. It also doesn't help that 1930s they can't show him feeding on men at all.
Well, they can't show any of that. Every time he brings up his cowl over his face whenever he's biting down into somebody's neck, or is supposed to be in the movies.
Yeah.
Which is, I get it, but I mean, come on. Like, to some extent.
They don't even let in the English version when he in the English version where he goes to bite Renfield, they don't even let him go that far. He just kind of like does his finger claw things and kind of just like bleh.
Yeah, but
That was a weird sound effect I did.
What I'm saying is earlier on, when Renfield cut his hand, they did show the cut and the blood on the hand, correct? Or did he just cover it up in a bandage and was like, "Oh, I cut it"?
No, we saw it. No, we saw it.
What I'm saying is, I guess you wouldn't know the answer to this, but why can they get away with showing blood when they can't get away with showing other forms of blood? Or
there is a difference between blood as a thing that is lying around than a blood as something that is related to violence. Because like you can't show like a grievous wound, because that would be a demonstration of violence, whereas this is just like, oh, he just cut himself normally. This is something everyone kind of understands. Because the assumption at this time is that everyone needs to be able to go into every movie and not be see something that you wouldn't want a kid
Hmm.
to see. So, I mean, kid will understand getting cut well enough. That's not something that's going to bother them. But them getting wounded by a sword or a gun is going to be treated differently.
Okay.
This is kind of like viewed as a natural process, more like yes, because you can show like because I mean in kids shows you need to be able to do like an episode where like kids get hurt and they need to like put band-aids on properly or whatever.
Hmm.
Anyway, not terribly important, but yeah. Yeah, as they're having this scene where Dracula's in the room, Van Helsing recommends that Ava go up to her room while they're talking. Van Helsing happens upon a box with a mirror on it and notices Dracula does not appear in the
Hmm.
mirror. And this is confirms that Dracula is the vampire. Yeah, so Van Helsing actually he's way more bad. Van Helsing is actually fairly badass in this. He walks right up to Dracula and he's like, "Hey, I just noticed something really weird." And he holds up the box with the mirror, opens it, and he's like, "Hey, look at that!" And Dracula just smacks the thing with his cane and busts
Uh-huh.
it, and
Which
just
I don't really
absolutely flips out.
understand at that point why he's just like outing himself. He could have just been like, "Oh, that is weird. Your box must be broken," or something along
I
those
mean,
lines. But like, I get
yeah,
it.
his fucking his freaking silver balls. It's not his phone. I mean, there's not really a good explanation for this. Less so than some that the audience is going to be able to
Yeah,
believe.
but I mean, here's to hoping, right?
Yeah. Oh no, my mirror isn't working. It's defying the laws of
Yes.
nature. Who knew? I mean, they bring up a lot of hokey stuff in this
Hmm.
movie, but this is you're not going to be able to make that
I,
fly.
I I would
Um,
really like to actually see him try. I was reading up on the character Van Helsing just quickly back in the a couple minutes ago. He's got like a PhD and MD, and he has DLIT, which is like a doctorate of literature, stuff like that. So he's a very well educated man, is what I'm saying. Trying to pull that off would have been quite.
but yeah, I admire his balls and just like walking up to Dracula and just like, hey, looky what I found.
Mhm.
And as if just to, because, I mean, otherwise we have to go through the scene where he has to like, oh no, seriously, this is what I saw. After this point, they kind of just start believing him a lot more.
Here's what I would like to say at this point. This thing has been relatively a botch job on Dracula's part. But with that being said, there is not a whole lot of evidence of a um, vampire here in the States, or for that matter, anybody who has any real understanding of what vampires are, correct? Like Van Helsing is
Yeah,
relatively
yeah,
the
that's
only person who believes there's vampires out there.
yeah, because he's from hokey Eastern Europe, and I get the impression that's why Dracula's here is because he the guys in his home country are very aware of what he is. They can't kill him, but it's making it a little bit more difficult for him to do his job. Whereas if he goes here, no one knows what vampires are. He can just take advantage of that.
What is Dracula's job?
Count serial
Yeah,
killer.
what's that entitle? He like as
Yeah, I guess that is weird. I was gonna say he collects taxes for a living, but I mean that requires a bit of an army
with
or something.
that being
Jeez.
said, he can live off of
Yeah, let's pay taxes to this known serial killer.
rats from well, I mean, if you're going to try and exploit money out of somebody, I'm pretty sure the easiest way to do it is to be like, I've got supernatural fucking powers. What are you gonna do? Not pay me my fucking money?
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah, fair enough.
but as I was saying earlier, this is a fuck up. This, in my opinion, is
Yeah.
beyond any reason. He should just cut his ties here. Say, fuck whoever this person is. Fuck this only guy who knows what I actually am. Fuck this random group of socialites that I've been hanging out with for the last couple of days, and just start killing people.
Yeah, it's a bit weird that he doesn't just like kill all these
He
people.
just lets it kind of go to a climax and then dies. He's kind of like a really bad immortal.
Yeah, especially the way the climax goes down. This guy doesn't really work because he could like. I mean, you could have killed him right here. Would they really have been able to track to you? I think you're kind of undocumented, bud. Oh yes, you. Yes, officer. I believe you found me. You are accusing me of the murder, but no one saw me leave the scene, did they? No. Okay, yeah, of course. Then fuck
Yeah,
off.
exactly. My other hypothesis at this point, you could have gotten away with right what's his face? Rhinefield. Just set him up for the fall. Do you really gonna keep your promises and make this guy immortal at this point? Like, he's crazy. He's in an asylum. He could have broken
True.
out, killed a whole bunch of people. And on top of that,
An asylum that's actually on their an asylum that's on
yeah,
Seward's property.
exactly.
So that's like, oh yeah, the guy broke out in the middle of the night and killed these people. I don't know what
Yeah,
happened. You're lucky I shot him at the moment I did. He would have heard Ava. So I'm a
yeah.
hero.
He could have. Nobody
Yeah,
would have known.
you have a point here, Cody.
And he has super strength and
I think you're right.
potentially none of the downsides of being a vampire. So Van Helsing doesn't even work on him.
I mean, at least in the middle of the night here, yeah, you're pretty
Yeah,
fucked. I mean, I guess. I mean, yeah, Van Helsing can hold up his cross all he wants. He can't like snap his neck with his bare hands. But I mean, throw a couch
yeah.
at him. Keep throwing couches at him until
I
he
know.
stops moving. I mean, yeah, there's stuff in here. This is like one of those things where just like they always point out like, oh yeah, that's stupid. Green Lantern's weakness is yellow. We'll just put him in a room that's full of yellow. All Green Lantern has to do is walk outside, pick up a car with his magic ring, and throw it through the window and kill the bad guy.
Except for we're rooting for the
Yeah, it's
bad
like,
guy.
oh yeah, it's not yellow. This car, this, yeah. I mean, yeah. I was like, oh yeah, cross, very interesting. You know what doesn't have a cross? This chair, this brick, this bedpost, this knife, this gun, this cane I am holding, and can throw really, really hard.
Okay,
Yeah, you have a very interesting point here,
new
Cody.
theory.
This could end pretty easily.
Okay, we're not quite there in the plot, but eventually Van Hel or Dracula goes in and he mind controls this woman to do his bidding for him.
Yeah.
Just get her to poison these fuckers. Like, you have no repercussions. You could just go ballistic and just murder half of these people. Like, we literally spend like the next 40 minutes going to the climax, and it's just like,
Give her a Colt
yeah,
45.
exactly.
Yeah, another person he could pin the murder on.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just yeah. This is a massive plot hole. Actually, I was glossing over it, but yeah, this is a
And
massive
I
plot
mean,
hole.
how are the books compared to this?
I don't recall whether or not they have this much interaction. Yeah, I don't recall if they have interaction. It's weird that he's addressed them like this. I think this is the way they're doing it out of necessity of them not having the effects for the detective movie that we would have to do, of tracking him down, of having a big climax
Hmm.
fight.
And this wasn't even a climax fight. This is like
No, yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah, Ava. After at the scene, Renfield kind of distracts them as Van Helsing lays out what the deal is with Dracula, that he's a vampire and everything. Juan's kind of disbelieving at this. In the meantime, Ava is wandering out of the house to meet with Dracula, and he feeds off her. And one of the maids comes back in and reports that Ava is dead. Yeah, the people go out to go find Ava. She's not dead. She's just in a really bad spot. The maid faints, and we see Renfield resisting the temptation to just murder this
Hmm.
maid. And it's I guess he doesn't, because we do see her later. We then start in our next scenes. We get a newspaper article about the lady in white who is killing children. We've noticed that this woman in white is Lucy, and she is killing these children. Ava had seen her. Ava as Ava is slowly becoming more vampiristic, is becoming weaker. She dumps Juan because if she becomes a vampire, they'll have to put a stake through her heart, and he doesn't want her doing that. It doesn't amount to much, but it's a really heartfelt scene. And it sets up Juan's character moments a little bit later. Van Helsing has closed off the room with Wolfsbane. He's instructed the maid not to open it for everything and to keep an eye over Ava so that she doesn't drop this stalk of Wolfbane he gave her,
Hmm.
which makes a bit more sense than the English version, because in the English version they gave her like a wreath that she puts around her neck, which doesn't make as much sense.
Well, I mean, a wreath would probably be better than just here. Hold this while you're
Oh yeah,
asleep.
it is. Yeah, it is better. Yeah, she doesn't need to be in the room in the English version, but she is still. This version, it makes sense for her to be in the room. We get a scene where Dracula communicates with Renfield. He's let out again. Van Helsing lays out his plan. They find Renfield outside again. He gets out a lot in this movie, and yeah, he gets out like 3 times. It's very interesting, or it's very kind of comical actually that he's always escaping. The nurse seems diligent at first, but she is of course hypnotized, and Dracula has her get open the windows, get rid of the wolfsbane, and he does a final feeding where he will finally turn her into a vampire. Though it's not stated out loud, we're just like slowly given hints that eventually results in one like getting hope because she's feeling a lot better and up and about, and slowly realizing that, oh yeah, she's half vampire now, which is very a bit heart wrenching. Yeah, and Renfield had showed up to distract them while Dracula did this. After this, Count Dracula has another confrontation with Van Helsing. Van Helsing manages to trick Dracula in a very intense scene where they're struggling, and Dracula's trying to control Van Helsing, and he finally does manage to chase Dracula off with some trickery that lets him get his cross out. He there's a sense that he barely got out of this alive, which is fairly harrowing.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is like intercut. These two scenes are intercut together with Van Helsing's confrontation to Dracula and Harker slowly realizing that Ava is a vampire. And it's very well cut, actually. It's surprising. This should be. I recommend this actually as like an inspiration to a lot of filmmakers. It's actually done fairly well for a movie of this time. The scene between Juan and Ava ends when Ava bites at him, and they finally admit that what's going on. And it's just a scene that is leagues better than the English version, which I will say again. They set up the barrier again, but again the maid lets Dracula in, and he kidnaps Ava while Juan and Van Helsing have gone to stake Lucy because she has been killing people and they need to save her immortal soul. and she's already dead, so they can't save her. They figure they can save Ava because she's technically still
Hmm.
alive. I think this is explained a little better in the English version that they need to kill Dracula during the daylight, and then that'll make sure that the people under his curse are reverted back. They managed to track Dracula back to Abbey Carfax or whatever it was
Hmm.
called.
Carfax Abbey.
They've yeah, Abbey Carfax. They tracked Dracula there through Renfield, who is then killed by Dracula for his incompetence. They managed to force open the door, which is a very, I mean, obvious in the real, in like a modern film, they'd be breaking that door into pieces, but they can't do that in this version, so it's just like they're pretending to pry it with a pry
Which
bar.
this has a funny scene where he's like, "Oh, this door's locked," and then Van Helsing's like, "Oh, let's use this crowbar here." Like he wasn't carrying a crowbar, and then there's just magically one in front of him for, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not like him having a crowbar in this situation would have been like something totally implausible. They probably could have used one to kill Lucy. And they don't have another stake with them, which is weird. Yeah, they don't carry anything with them. It's
Or
just
a
a weird.
rock or any of it. They're like, "Go find me something to pound this stake in."
Yeah, when they get a stake later in the movie, they just take like an edge of a 2x4 and like a chunk of metal
Yeah.
and just use that rather than the traditional wooden mallet and wooden stake. It's weird. After they force open the door, they wander through this catacomb and they just walk up to Dracula's coffin, which is if you've seen the English version, he's in the opposite one in
Hmm.
this one because the English crew had wrecked the first coffin. That's actually where the 2x4 comes from in the English version. They wreck up the other
Hmm.
coffin. Yeah, and then Van Helsing kills Dracula off screen,
Yeah.
which is yeah, this is totally fucking
Hmm.
unacceptable. They could have done any number of things to make this more
Hmm.
exciting. It's only this is seen as tied with the English version, and that the English version shows actually shows a I guess Mina in that one being freed from Dracula's power. Whereas this one, you get a more audible gasp of pain from Dracula. But yeah, there's no fight or anything. Dracula doesn't even kind of like attempt to jump out of the thing to stop him from getting stabbed. Yeah, this easily could have been done better. Um, I guess censorship, very disappointing. It just took a lot out of it for me. So yeah, the movie ends with Van Helsing sending Juan and Ava out ahead. Well, he had agreed to give Renfield a proper Christian burial earlier in the movie.
Hmm.
A line not spoken in the English version, which is weird. It's really weird in the English one. He just kind of just like says, "Oh no, you go on for ahead," and just doesn't. You two go on ahead and doesn't give any sort of reason. Yeah, and then Ava and Juan are kind of ascending the staircase with kind of like a bit of wedding organ music coming on, which is a nice bit of cinematic shorthand, which I like for their I guess their happily ever after. It's very clever. Final thoughts?
I really don't want to do another one of these at all. I don't know if it's just it's too dated. It's too dated, and it was done horribly, and it was not great, and it was subtitles, and I think all of this is just kind of accumulating into this kind of.
Yeah, the sequels don't have Spanish versions to
Hmm.
my knowledge. So we'd be going to Bela Lugosi if we did continue with this. No, we could also just do every Dracula version
Hmm.
movie.
That's a lot.
We'll decide on that later. We'll definitely yeah, we'll get back to Dracula in
Well,
October, I
I
think.
actually just went in while we were watching this, and I started downloading the 1992 Dracula, which is Gary Oldman's Dracula. and Keanu Reeves with Keira Knightley starring as, just to try and compare it to see, how much of this are you actually losing out on because of censorship, and how much of it you're losing out on because of time constraints, or time period constraints and stuff like that, budget constraints, whatever. Just how much are you
Yeah.
losing from the story that Bram Stoker wrote, which has gone on to span, you know, like literally created the vampire genre, and how much it's gonna differ. And then I would like to take that to be able to compare the 1931 version to it. And I mean, as you were saying earlier, like 1931 scary is going to change drastically than what I like 2000 or 2020 scary, because of, well, the time periods. I was reading up on the Wikipedia page where it was saying, people were fainting because of how scary this movie was.
And I get that this is, I understand. I watched this and I'm like, you know what? I get how a bit more primitive, a more primitive movie-going audience would find this quite scary. It's completely understandable. You see what's scary about it. It's just not as effective in the modern
Hmm.
day because we've seen so much.
And yeah, I mean, every professional review that I'm reading on this is like super good. Everybody's like, oh, it I'm not gonna say define the genre, but like it had the everlasting influences over the genre as a whole, regardless of English or Spanish versions. I think this is in underneath the English language version, but Robert Ebert is giving reviews and stuff like that. Rotten Tomatoes has a basis of 91% approval rating, 7.8 out of 10. I don't know. To me, it just doesn't hold up in the
Yeah.
long sense. I'm gonna give it about 3 out of 10, maybe, just because it did set the pace for every vampire movie after that. Anything that I'm gonna compare it to, except for maybe Twilight. I'm gonna say this: it's the Twilight of Dracula
Yeah.
movies.
I feel like there's probably a worse Dracula movie.
Is there?
There's gotta be. I
I mean,
mean,
there's like comedy
I
spoofs of Dracula that I like. I wouldn't sit down and watch at all, but I wouldn't.
yeah.
I mean, that's trying to take the meaning of it and spin it into.
It's not as bad as I was maybe because some of this stuff does date. It's not like when I watched original Star Trek and the Shatnerisms are really thick. It's kind of still restrained enough. But yeah, we'll see about this. We'll definitely come back to Dracula. I have a soft spot for vampire movies when they're done good,
I
and
just wanted
even early
to
stuff like this.
touch
It's a little bit.
something. I'll give it this much: it clips along pretty good. Uh, when I was watching it though, I felt that for a little bit, it's kind of somewhere in the middle. I think it was at the point where it was after they figured out that Dracula was a vampire, and Van Helsing kind of fingered him for the killings that have been going on. I thought to myself, man, this is really drawing on. I was like, when are they gonna like do something about this? And then it cut right at that moment, and they came back and they're like, well, thank God we dealt with Lucy. Now we're gonna go deal with Dracula. And I'm like, wow, that kind of just off screen and sorted itself out. And I mean, it's indicative of the time. This happens a lot in older movies, I guess. So.
The amount of dealt with off screen in this movie is just
Hmm.
unacceptable.
Hmm.
They're just not quite doing enough. It's a couple. You're taking a couple steps forward, but you're not quite there yet. Um, as for me, I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10 for that reason. Because like the stuff that's good, I really like, but there's just like an unacceptable amount of them not doing stuff that should really be in a movie. The English version I give like a 5 out of 10. No, this is undoubtedly the far superior version.
That's kind of cool. The film poster
Yeah, no,
sold in
yeah.
20. Sorry, just an original like film poster from the 1931 version of this movie just sold in March 2012 for like $310,000 or $310,000.
Cool.
Oh, I guess that's only the sixth highest price for a film poster. Not as cool as I thought it was.
I mean, that's high. That's high, though.
Eh,
Um,
I mean, for
anyway,
film poster.
so, what are we reviewing next week, Cody?
Hopefully it's not black and white.
Shouldn't be. I don't think there's any other black and white things on the list. Okay, roll the dice. I rolled that far along the table. That is a 5. So Rocky 4. We're going back to the Razzie winners that aren't actually that bad.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you seen any other Rocky movies?
No. No.
Neither have I. Yeah. It's
No.
weird. No. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I've seen
kind.
what's it called? Apollo? No, Creed. It's called Creed. I've seen Creed.
Does
That's a
that?
very good
I
movie.
mean, yeah. I guess that kind of counts as a Rocky movie,
Yeah,
right?
I mean it's spin-off sequel, generational sequel.
Who was Apollo Creed? Is an African American person within the.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And Creed takes place is story is about Apollo Creed's son. Yeah, Creed is about Apollo Creed's son, Adonis Creed.
He also played the guy who plays Apollo Creed in Rocky 4 also played. Yeah, this is played by Carl Weathers, who played Al Dillon in Predator. Tie together.
Oh yeah, Dylan, the pencil pusher.
hmm
Yeah,
Yeah, and he also played for the BC Lions
you son of a
as a
bitch.
linebacker. Yeah,
Really?
from 1971 to
Oh,
1974.
neat. So, you can follow. Yeah, that's going to be the episode. You can follow us on Facebook at Kyle and Cody's called CinemaCast. Follow us on Twitter at KCCinemaPod. Circulate those links. Give us those 5-star reviews. And there's also a YouTube channel now, which may have the videos on it eventually. I posted the mini Snyder Cut version video I did. Yep. See you guys next week when we review Rocky 4. And I'm stopping recording.